You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing to share your story on the podcast today. I am incredibly grateful.
No, thank you. I'm the one that's honored. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that we found really intriguing about your story, and we're going to touch on this some more, hopefully, is the idea that you are in a marriage with somebody who struggles with addiction. And for now, you are saying, look, I'm here to stay. I want to stay. I'm going to stay for now. And that's really interesting to us because I think a lot of people in these types of relationships think that eventually it's always going to end up with having to divorce or having to break up their partnership. So that's really, really helpful. So let's start at the beginning, though, before we get there, which is How did you meet your spouse, and when did you know, there might be a little problem here?
We met as teenagers, actually. And, excuse me, we went to the same church. I was 13, really young. That's ridiculous to even say that aloud. But he was 16. And I walked into the youth group one night, and, there he was. It was just like magic for me as a young girl. I was more interested in him at first than he in me, of course, but I, for reasons of my own, just pursued him until he started finally talking to me. We didn't go to the same high school, so we had to pass letters back and forth between a friend of mine who went to his school. But I fell hard for this young man. Really, I have a lot of my work in this recovery has been looking into my own issues. I really didn't realize that I had so many until I started the program, and I say that as a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It may have been, uncomfortable to dig into those things, but really, we all have reasons why we fall in love with who we do, when we do. It's not all just, magical angels from above, landing on our shoulder. We have our reasons that particular person or that particular personality, that we're attracted to them for that reason. Anyway, we started dating. I was very young, of course, and he wanted to take me out. And my mother said no, of course, at first because I was just turned 14, of all things. But, we did do benign type activities together. We married when I was 17. Like I said, he was older than me. We dated all through high school. And the year before, he had actually joined the United States military, the Marine Corps. And he, proposed marriage to me from a letter from boot camp. And of course I said yes, and my mother approved and signed for me and all. And we married a week after I graduated high school, one week. So I really went from my parents' house to my husband's home with no in between. And I really was so wrapped up in him that, I just, all I could see was him. I know, and I may be rambling on here, I'm sorry, but when I was a senior in high school, one of our classes, had a visitor come in from the local newspaper, and she was interviewing high school graduates in town and asking what our plans were after graduation. And, other people had, law school, and, I'm going to drive a race car, and, I'm going to be a business person. Well, I wasn't ready because my only answer was, I'm getting married, I'm getting married. And in my little mind, that was just like the the end all. I'm getting married, and like the princess and the prince, we're just gonna ride off into the sunset together, and that will be the end of it all, which is so naive looking back on that. But that was my mindset when we married. He was deployed away in the States, but so we moved off together, and I knew when we were dating, when he was a teenager, that he liked to drink beer. He would make a big deal about buying me a beer, here's you one too, and I was just so young and silly that I just thought, okay, and I would drink it, but I didn't like it. Alcohol doesn't make me feel good like it does so many other people. It's just a depressant for me. It makes me really sick afterwards, and I just never liked it. But that's what the cool kids did. They drank beer, and he did that, and I really didn't think anything of it because in my mind he was the cool kid. I wanted to impress him and keep him with me no matter what I had to sacrifice to do that. So I knew he drank when we married. And as we moved away and established our own little home together, I began to realize just how much alcohol was a part of his everyday life. And at first I was trying so hard to fit in with his buddies, on base, and there were his buddies' wives, and of course they were all older than me. And so I just kind of went along. And one of the main things to do, at least for enlisted men, were parties every weekend, at different people's homes. And so we would go, and of course, your entry into the home for the party, is a bottle of liquor, or a 24 pack of beer. And so we went, and he drank more than I ever realized. And it was really eye-opening for me. I was a bit put off, but I just persisted, in trying to fit in. And there was finally, I'm not even going to go into why I decided to get pregnant right now, or maybe I should, I don't know. But I will. I'm going to go there. Hopefully my oldest daughter will never hear this and be offended, because I love her desperately, and I'm so glad she's here. But I was so desperate to keep this man in my life that I decided to stop taking the pill. Just 6 months after we were married, and get pregnant, because in my little mind, if I had a baby with him, that would just sort of solidify our relationship anyway. So I did that. I got off the pill, and of course, got pregnant right away. And as you should, I decided that this was a good excuse for me not to have to go to these drinking parties anymore, because I didn't like to go anyway. And I told him that one night, and he was, of course, he was excited I was pregnant, and he didn't want me to drink either. That wasn't it. But he thought I should just go anyway and hang out and, get along and maybe drive him home, I guess. But I told him that I really didn't want to go to the parties anymore. I just didn't feel right there. And he did not understand. And we had, I think, the biggest fight we'd ever had in our whole history. And he got in the car and left and went to the party without me. I was upset and sat up all night. It was thunderstorms that night, I remember. And I was on the couch waiting for him to come home. And he stumbles in the door, and he's, covered in dirt and leaves, where it looks like he's been, rolling around in the dirt. And it's just so drunk. I've never seen him like that. And that was my first inkling that this is not right. He continued to drink throughout his military time. There was 13 months after our daughter was born, he was deployed overseas, and that was back in the 80s, and we didn't have cell phones, and I couldn't go with him. So I stayed home, and he said that, he's told me since that, that was what they did. He wishes that he had handled that differently, maybe, He said, but that's what they did for fun overseas. They just, they did their job and then they came back to the barracks and they got drunk, got very, very drunk. And once he came home, he continued to drink beer. I just was doing the best I could to be a little mom to our daughter and keep him happy and keep our little family afloat. We moved back home. We live in the deep south here in the United States, and a little bitty town where everybody knows everybody, and it was a dry county. If you can imagine that being dry counties, but there were back then. And he still drank. It didn't deter his drinking at all. So I was still doing everything I could to try and keep him happy. I was just desperate for this man and I to keep our marriage together, even though there were a lot of unhappy things going on. Arguments, money problems, the regular parent problems, trying to raise a child. I was a stay-at-home mom then, and, my whole world was him first, and, and then being a mom. Am I talking too much, Michelle? Are you still there?
You're doing great. You are doing so well. I am so proud of you. You're saying so many wonderful things. So please continue. I want to know, so you had one child with him. You're living in the United States. You understand there's a problem. What happens next?
There was a time when I think, and I don't even know, because really what was going on in my husband's mind. He's a very quiet man, at least as far as talking about feelings. He doesn't discuss his feelings or his thoughts or, his plans, personal plans with me or anyone. But he was unhappy when we came back home. He handled it by hanging out with his old buddies from home. They would go out fishing and camping and stay gone all weekend drinking. And, I wanted him to step up and, be my husband and, be a father and, do those dad and husband things on the weekend with his family. But he wanted to be gone and he wanted to be drinking. And that was, of course, a point of contention with us. It got to the point that he started going out to bars. He worked at 3-11 shift at that time, and he just wouldn't come home like 4 a.m. And he would stumble in the house, and of course there I would be waiting to question him, and where have you been? And he would just tell me it was none of my damn business. We had a lot of problems. And we had actually separated at one point when we had, right after we had a huge argument, and he was drinking, and I had, we had argued while he was under the influence, which is just a huge no-no I've learned. But he went into the back room and got out his pistol and came in there, and he never threatened me or threatened the girls or pointed it at anyone, but he was just rambling on his drunk whatever and was waving it around, and that was it. That was the end of this for me. I was just no, I can't do this anymore. So I grabbed the girls up and jumped in the car and we went to my mom's house, my parents' house. He ended up moving out then, but we didn't stay apart long. I had every intention of divorcing him at that point. I had actually seen a lawyer, and gotten my first questions answered. And he called me and really gave me the old, my parents are going to kick me out. I don't have anywhere to stay, and so I let him come back home because I really wasn't. Looking back on it, I may have been ready for things to change and make a drastic change, but I wasn't ready to, to let him go. For reasons of my own, looking back on it, I just could not be divorced. My parents were divorced when I was 5. His parents had been married, forever, and they frowned very heavily on divorce. In fact, my mother-in-law, his mother, had a tearful conversation with me when she found out we were going to get married, about how I was the daughter of a divorced woman, and she didn't want that to happen to her son. Like, I was just some kind of, had this red letter on my shirt or something, big red V, But I just did not want to be a divorced woman like my mother was. I wanted to prove to my mother-in-law, to everyone else in town, to everybody that knew me growing up, that, I could do better than my mom had. My mom was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and I don't want to point a finger at her at all. She loved me and raised me when my father abandoned us when I was 5, and she did the very best that she could do, and she was a tremendous woman. But I think that part of me as a child kind of blamed her a little bit for my father leaving. She didn't keep him happy enough. When I was 5, I was the youngest of 4 kids, 4 daughters, and I was at home with my mom. I'll never forget this. Turned out to be the turning point of my whole personality experience. I found out later my father had been seeing another woman, and my mom, of course, she was a mom at home and didn't have a career or anything. And she didn't want him to leave. She wanted, their marriage to continue no matter what. And he came home that day, and they argued. I remember this tremendous argument. And I was just 5, and I hid under the kitchen table with my hands over my ears. I remember I could see myself under the table and their legs and the argument. And my mom fell to the floor, and my dad went out the door, slammed the door, and she was crying, and she spied me under the table and pulled me out from under the table and rushed me to the window and, put me in the window, and we were both crying. And I remember seeing my dad's car just back right past me, and that was it. He never came back, and he never really, he married his new wife, and he never really had any kind of relationship with us after that. And so I think that's when I decided that, I was not good enough to keep him. There I was, the cutest little thing, with her pigtails and crying, and I was the baby of the family. But I just, I should have been able to keep him from leaving is where my little mind was. And also, I sort of blame my mom for not being a good enough wife to keep him happy. So I think that me trying so hard to keep my husband happy, and to prove to myself and to the world that I was good enough to make a man stay, was really the root of all of my codependency that came out later.
Wow, that's really powerful. So how do you think that experience, that painful memory that you say is ultimately responsible for pivoting your personality, do you think, does that have a grasp on you with your decision to stay or leave your current husband?
I will be very honest and say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, there's more good between us than there is bad. Now. Now, because I've done so much work on myself. There was a time when I was really, 2 years ago when I did like everybody does, the Google search and found your program. I was at an all-time low, and I didn't really know why. I just felt so adrift and so used up and so out of sorts that I just didn't know which way to turn. I felt so many emotions that I couldn't put a name on what they were. So I think my mind just I settled on, well, he's drinking, and it's the drinking that's the problem, and I need to figure out a way to live with this drinking. I need to figure out a way to be happy, to make this work, even if he's drinking. And, that's how I started. So I really do feel like part of it is from, my own issues of not wanting to be left and wanting to be good enough. But I don't think it's all of it anymore, because through the work I've done in this program, I'm going to cry. It has meant so much to me, because I am not that little girl under this table anymore. The last 2 years I've been able to, first, I was able to get under there with her and listen to her cry. I know that sounds so silly, it sounds kind of like I'm some kind of therapist or something for myself, but I had to find out what that little girl felt and why she felt that way. And then I had to, go sit in the window with her and, say, he left, but it wasn't you, it was him. It was him. It was his fault. It was his problem. And it wasn't your mom, it was him. All my adult life, I knew where my father lived, and, he would call sometimes, on Christmas, hey, how you doing? And that was about it. But I still, for some reason, let him off the hook, completely let him off the hook, as it being my fault and my mom's fault. So I have had to do so much personal work that when we got to the part of your program where it's the self-inventory, oh my goodness, I'm sitting here beside a Amazon box. Of course, we all have tons of those, don't we? Just full of notebooks and notes that I've made about my own personal work, my own self-inventory, that really was able to bring me from a beaten down, lost little girl, woman attached to a husband. It's like I was strapped to his back. I didn't have any thoughts that were my own. I didn't have any feelings that were my own. Every time I might want to feel something, it was like I would stop and think, what would my husband think about this, And I would go with whatever I thought he would think, or what he would feel, or what he would want, because I was just almost like an addict, the typical addict under a bridge, that's just sitting there shooting up, and I would just shoot up all the time with him. It was just, as long as he was happy with me, the needle went in my arm, and man, I felt great. And the moment I thought that he was not happy, and even if it had really nothing to do with me at all, I would just strain myself out trying to get him back happy. Because if he was happy, that meant I was okay and I was good. But I never knew what I was. I didn't know anything. I liked his music. I liked his movies. I liked to go where he liked to go. And, when I found the program, that was part of where I was at the time. And it's the weirdest thing, too. I have one little granddaughter who's about to turn 6 now. And at the time, I had been keeping her a lot while her parents worked. And she was around 2 years old. And my daughter had gotten word that she was gotten a job, a dream job for her, 2 hours away, and they were going to be moving. And, I wouldn't have my little granddaughter with me every day. And that was like the turning point when I was feeling so upset, but not because I was going to miss her, but because she was going to miss me. I mean, and I felt guilty because she would be upset going to, or might be upset going to daycare. And I was just all upset one day, and I thought, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong. And I guess I'm circling back around to, I just settled everything on that it was my husband's drinking. That had to be the problem. And if I could just get him to stop drinking, that everything would just be great. So I just blamed him rather than myself. I naturally, because, he can do no wrong in my eyes at the time, no matter what terrible thing he did and no matter what terrible thing he said, or I always just twisted it around to where, okay, well, if I've asked him where he's been and he shouts at me, it's none of my damn business, then, I need to back up and figure out what I need to do to make him happy. Oh, man, just saying it out loud is just terrible. Terrible, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's terrible at all, Wendy. I think it's normal. And I think what you said it at the beginning, there's a reason why we are attracted to people that are not healthy for us, right? That have these problems. It's like a magnet. Right. And we have these issues and we're attracted to the other end of the magnet that has other issues. And it's hard to separate, whether it's physically separating or just both, getting yourself healthy enough to mentally separate, right? Maybe you still choose to be in a marriage. Right. But I don't think it's healthy at all, unhealthy. And I think what I hear you doing a lot is judging yourself for making all of these, what you would say are mistakes. But I don't see them as mistakes. I see them as opportunities that allowed you to find the healing that you deserved since you were 5. I mean, this has all led you to falling in love with him and doing your work and marrying him and having your kids. It's all brought you to this moment where you have self-reflected and healed previous wounds that had nothing to do with him, right? So where are you now? What's the status of how are you doing? How is your marriage? And what do you think about when you think about the future?
I am in a really, really good place right now. And I almost, when I first answered Lori's, questions on the group about who would like to speak with you, I first said, yes, I would love to, because, what an opportunity. But then afterwards I thought, oh, what have I done? I don't have this down. Who am I kidding? I don't have this down, and I really almost, that's just turned back out. But then I thought, I have come so far, and maybe there's something here that may help someone else. And I'll tell you, one of your interviews, and I know you've heard so many compliments about this interview, Chris, I'm sure you have, is with your friend Dana. And it's the one that the transcript, and you can listen to in Love Over Boundaries, actually was the actual one where she talked about how she found a way to love her husband, even though he still has a drinking problem. And it was just like a light went on. I'm like, oh, I don't have to I don't have to divorce him, and I don't have to leave if I'm not ready to do that, if that's not something I want. And then her line, and I wish I could say it verbatim, but where she says that she never has to have that conversation with him ever again about his drinking. And it was like, oh, the angels had sung in my heart because I had had so many of those, and they never went anywhere. And they always twisted around and, came back on me every single time. So that interview, and also remembering that interview made me go ahead with this one because I thought, where I'm nowhere near Dana's caliber. I feel like that I've learned so much about myself. When I thought I was going to go in and learn about him, my first thoughts were, it's a drinking problem, so how can I figure out a way to help him? Here we go again, so that if he's happy, I can be happy. And I found out when I got into the program that it was me, it wasn't him. It was all things that were twisted around in my own mind and in my own heart. So I got into the program to answer your question, sort of. I'm rambling again, I'm sorry. But the first thing that I heard from you that was just, it's not my fault that he drinks. It's not anything that I did or didn't do. It wasn't because, I'm going to cry again. It wasn't because I wasn't a good enough wife. It wasn't because, I wasn't pretty enough or perfect enough or interested in him enough. You talked one time about, I think it was in a podcast, about if we were just as perfect as a mannequin or a supermodel, they would still drink that beer or shoot that heroin or snort that line. And, you're exactly right. And that they may try to point the finger back at us and say, if you didn't, then I wouldn't. But no. That was my first epiphany that was brought out through your program. And the second thing was that, oh yes, he does have an alcohol problem. I'm not imagining any of this. He does have a problem with drinking, and I think I sent Lori the information before this interview, and I put in there that I don't think he's an alcoholic yet. I backtracked. I do think he is. I think I was in denial when I typed that last week. So I still have issues, that I need to work through. You don't have to, he doesn't drink every day. But when he does, he can't stop. And he's told me that I don't have an off button. Everybody else has an off button and I just don't. And, alcohol does something in him that I can never picture, I can't imagine or picture in my mind because it doesn't do that for me. He can take a drink and it takes him from, maybe unhappy or sad, and it brings him up, at least to a point anyway. It brings him up, and now he's outgoing and he's happy and he feels great. But it doesn't do that for me. So, it's harder for me to understand it, but I can also have more compassion for him when he does drink and not get as angry with him that he does drink, because I know that it makes him feel really good to do so. It may not be a good thing, but it is good for him. So I can look at him and have a little bit more grace than I used to have, and I learned that also through the program. The next thing that really affected me was that there was nothing that I can do that will make any difference whatsoever in his choices to drink. That let me off the hook. I could stop trying. I could stop trying. I could stop being his Holy Spirit. If you're a Christian, I could stop trying to convince him he has a problem. I could just step back and just, let him be what he is and do what he is. Do what he wants to do and be who he is. But that's when I had to learn about boundaries for myself. Of course, I had none, absolutely none where he was concerned. He could get away with absolutely anything in the world, and all I would do was to turn it around and blame myself. So he never really had to apologize or anything because I had already done all the work for him. He could just kind of scamper away and, be fine because I was doing all the suffering for him. It's just crazy, but I think a lot of people might can identify with that too, maybe.
Yes, I think
and I also can. Yeah. And the last thing that I think that just really hit me in a self-inventory was that I'm addicted to. And I'm addicted to him and his problems and trying to solve his problems and trying to make him happy and, trying to fix his bad feelings so that I don't have to feel bad. Oh, that was a big one for me. It wasn't that I cared so much that he hurt. I just didn't want him to hurt because that would hurt me. It sounds so selfish, but that's exactly, I'm just going to be honest, that's exactly where I was there. But one other thing that I'd like to bring out, and we talk about this a lot in the group, is that it's really helped me is picturing addiction as another person in my relationship. And I know you also had a podcast about addiction being the third party. Mm-hmm. And that really has helped me so much to be able to separate the man that I love from his alcohol problem. And it's also helped to separate me from my addictive behaviors that I have too. And I don't mean any disrespect to the comedian Jeff Foxworthy, but somehow when I was studying over this and thinking about it, his face came to mind, and it's nothing to do with him at all, but it was just a picture. I was trying to picture what the addiction in my home, what it looks like. Everybody has, every person who drinks or has an addiction, there's a level of it. What I'm trying to say is, some are worse than others. I don't know how to say it right. You probably can do better with that. But mine looks just like Jeff Foxworthy. Because, he just sits back on the couch with his goofy grin, and his Iron Maiden t-shirt and his jeans, and, he just sits back and just watches the antics and tells my husband all kinds of terrible things that I can only guess. What does addiction say to him that makes him drink and do the things that he does? I know what addiction says to me. I know what Jeff says to me, and they are the most horrible, vile, terrible things. And so I can only imagine, what my husband is going through in his own addiction. He's told me before that, he can be just driving his truck and not even thinking about anything. And next thing he knows, he's in a liquor store. And he says, I don't know how this happened. And I understand that too, because I can be right here at home today like I am, and everything's fine. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting ruminating over, wonder what he's going to do when he gets off work today. And Jeff is here. He's come in, I've let him in the door, and he's whispering in my ear, you really need to see about him. You need to do something about that. No, I don't. Most days I'm able to keep old Jeff out in the yard. Like, I imagine today he's out there smoking cigarettes, sitting there on the chair, just waiting for me to give him an opportunity to come in and drag me back into addiction. But because of the program, I've found so many tools. You talk about building your toolbox. So many things that I can use that keeps him out in the yard. And some days he's not even out there at all. I don't even think about it, He's not there. And it's such a good day on those days. But like a lot of days, I really have to be on point and mindful of where my thoughts are going, so that I can keep Jeff out in the yard.
Okay, I love that analogy so much. I think that's terrific.
Well, it really does help me. And I want to also tell a lot of the ladies in the group, some of them are dealing with things that just tear my heart. And their addiction in their home doesn't look anything like Jeff. He's more like the worst motorcycle gang, brass knuckles, leather jacket, horrible, mean person ever sitting on their couch. That they really have to deal with something worse than I do. But really, honestly, no matter how bad the addiction is in our relationship, the things that we've learned in the program still help. They still shut him up. We may not can get him off the couch with their arms around our partner, but, we can get them off of us, and we can do everything we can to keep them from, taunting us into saying and doing things that just solidify his place on the couch,
Yeah, I do. I do know. And I love that you have given the voice of addiction a face, a personality, a name. I think that's so fascinating because that's super helpful in identifying what your husband's voice sounds like versus the addiction's voice versus your own voice in your head. Because there's a lot of voices when you love someone struggling with addiction, right? It's very busy up there. And so I love that you have been able to separate that in a very creative way. That's wonderful.
And, it also helps with, for those of us who have chosen to stay today, like you said, we can always change our mind. But it helps us to be able to have compassion, to have real compassion, and to see the person aside from, their addiction. And to be able to show that person love while, giving Jeff the finger, so to speak. Sometimes, and I do have to, and, those of us, we have to sort of live on a broadcast delay, sort of, and to always be able to think before we speak. And it gets hard sometimes, and I fail. Sometimes my mouth opens and I think, why did I say that? Because Jeff is laughing his head off over there at me. And, but all we can do is pick up and start again and remember that, I am not powerless anymore. I have choices. I have options. Even for those of us who don't work outside the home maybe and stay at home with the children and are financially dependent, the things we learn in the program have to do with being your own person, being someone separate from them and having your own self, having your own interests, your own things, your own thoughts, and your own likes and dislikes. Because if we can get ourselves separated from them and no longer bound up onto, like sometimes I think I've even put it in a comment on the group that I felt like I was just strapped to his back. Everything he did, I had to do. Well, no, we don't. We don't have to do it that way. We don't have to live our lives that way. And that is one thing that really has helped me, is to separate myself from him. Although we are still together and I'm still his wife and I still love him deeply and really better than I used to, because it's like, how you're in a movie theater. Let me put this way. You're in a movie theater and, you sit at the front. You sit in the very front. And there's the screen, and it's right there, and it's so huge, and you're so close, and you can't really see, and you can't really hear, and you don't really understand what's going on because you're so close. And that's a lot of the codependency, at least for me, was I was so close to him. I was him, that I couldn't see anything else And the program helped me to back up and take a seat, and further back. And I could see, I could see the truth. I could see him. I could see that there was space between him and me. Space that, he could feel or I could feel, and we could back up. There was one, I wish I could remember all the podcasts. They're all such treasures that you've done. But I think one of them is when you talked about being the attachment theory. And I had a lot of trouble with that one initially. I was like, then I've spent so much work detaching myself from my husband. I was like, no, I can't go back. But you weren't really talking about going back. You were talking about healthy detachment, which is taking that seat back in the movie theater, where you're still there and you're still enjoying the movie. It's still great, but there's room and space, and you can see everything, and we can meet in the middle, and then he can do his thing and I can do my thing, and then we come together. I mean, that's what I think, kind of what you mean. Maybe I'm interpreting it differently.
No,
than maybe you
got it perfectly. That's perfect.
Yeah. But I've been able to do that. I can give 2 instances this week that, it's easy to talk about it in theory, and when you have to do it, it's a different story. But twice this week, I've been off, and off work, because I work too. And he's come home from work, and I walked out to greet him, and I immediately say, Jeff here. There he is. He gets out of the truck with my husband, and I'm like, oh no. But because of the things I've learned to do and the things in my toolbox, I'm able to step back and say, yeah, okay, he's had something to drink. It's not the end of the world. It's not, it's not a catastrophe. It just is. He just decided to have a drink for whatever reason, and now he's home, and he's being nice to me. He's smiling. He's saying, "Hey, baby, I love you. I missed you. Come here, give me a hug." I'm not. The worst thing I feel like that I could do would be, in that case, to reject it, because suddenly, if I did that, if I crossed my arms and went in the house and slammed the door, then it's all about me. It's no longer the fact that, he had a drink. Because he knows he had a drink. And I know he's had a drink. I know it. There's no truth to be told, because we both know. But if I slam the door, then suddenly old Jeff can, put his arm around him and say, yeah, man, I see why you drink. But, but if I was able to do this week, those times, I reached back for him and I hugged him genuinely. I said, I'm glad you're home. How was your day? And that was it. I mean, it was okay. And he hugged me, and we had a great evening together. And if he had continued to drink, Michelle, I know what I would do. I have my boundaries. If he continued to drink and he got to a place where he was being disrespectful of me, or got into that angry place, or, started repeating himself, because he gets to a place in his drinking that it's just impossible. What I do then is I just recognize my boundary and I disappear. I don't have to be in there and take it, I don't have to listen to it. I don't really, a lot of times I don't say anything. I'll just come in there and I'll just pat him on my hand and say, baby, I'm going to go outside for a while, sit and swing, read my book. And he's like, okay. And that's it, If he has followed me before, and I just sit there and I listen to him ramble, ramble about whatever. And I say, okay. And then I pick up my book and I say, honey, I'm going to go in the house, So I go in the house. I have also, before it got really, really bad, and I had to get in the car and just go for a drive. That's okay. I have what I call my go bag in the bedroom closet. He doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't need to. It's mine. so that if at any time I need to go, I have my bag, I can grab it, I can, say, hey baby, I'm going to be at our daughter's house tonight or at a hotel. I tell them where I'm going to go, but, I can grab that and just be gone. That's the way we have to handle it, is to know our limits, be ready with our boundaries, be ready to enforce them lovingly and respectfully, as best we can, and just take care of ourselves.
That sounds incredible. So healthy. You've done so much work, and it is very obvious. I know that your story and everything that you just shared is not only going to resonate with a lot of people out there, but it's also going to be really helpful. And I'm sure that this is going to get listened to over and over again. So thank you for being brave enough to share your story. I'm so glad you did not back out. I'm so glad.
I started to because I was like, oh my gosh, I have not been this nervous and excited. And I'm going to show my age here. But since I saw Sean Cassidy in 1978 in concert, you probably don't even know who that is, do you? Because you're younger than me. But some ladies will know. I have not been this nervous and excited since that day.
I do know who Sean Cassidy is, and that's hysterical.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, well, it's the truth.
You nailed it. So thank you. I'm really, really grateful. And you know what? I'm going to see Dana next week and her husband. So if it's okay with you, I would love to share how she helped you, because she was nervous too to do that interview. So I'm going to share with her that that interview really helped you and carry you through some moments.
Please do.
I will.
I still go back and listen to those, because her story just touched my soul, and it just changed the whole trajectory of what I was working on. I I wasn't sure at first if it was even going to make a difference with me, but I listened to you, and I said, I'm at my rock bottom, and this is my chance. I'm going to give it everything, even if I don't think it's going to work, even if I don't understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm just going to do it, and I just trusted the process and, did each and everything that you said to do, no matter what. And I would do one thing and I would think, oh, wow, I feel better. And so I would keep on, and I'm like, okay, well, that worked. Let me go on to the next one. What else can I do? And, now I really do feel like, for the first time in my life, it doesn't matter to me what he does anymore. If he comes home from work today, and I love him, I'm telling you, I do. Our relationship is in a really good place. But if he came home today and he said, Wendy, I don't love you anymore, and I'm leaving, I have another woman or whatever, I know that I would grieve and it would hurt, but I would be okay, because I am me again. I'm not just his little wife that has to make him happy anymore. I am me, and I will still be me without him. With him, I'm still me, and that is the treasure that I found in this program. And everybody finds, I think, their own little treasure. And that's what's so good about it, Michelle, is the way that you've done this is, it spells out things to do and not do, but everybody gets to interpret it and make it their own, and inside they will find their treasure. And they may not find it unless they leave, and that's okay. I mean, you left and you needed to leave, and it was the best thing you ever did, right? You said.
Yeah.
And and for me, I choose different, and that's the treasure here, is there's no answer. There is no answer, only path to the answer. For you,
Mm.
for whomever is listening, your answer is in here. But you have to do the work, like you said, and you have to do these things that are spelled out, for us. You told us exactly the things to stop doing. I think one of the first reflex emails when you join the program is the 12 things to, remember, is it stop doing or start doing or something? But I mean, stop looking, stop searching, just, stop watching him. And you think, whoa, if I stop that, my world's going to fall apart. No, it won't. No, it won't, because so many of us have come along with this program. I don't, you probably know the numbers, but the success stories that say, everything, the world will not collapse if you don't know where he is right now. It's just those little things that I just testify with all my soul that this works. Trust the process.
Thank you. I would give you a huge, huge hug if I were with you right now. Thank you for saying
I would accept it.
I'm really grateful because it feels validating for me because you make these things and you never quite know, if you doubt yourself because I'm human. And so I did all the research and all of the tools and God knows how many, I think you've been doing this 12 years, but you're never 1,000% sure. So it's really, really kind of you to share that. It's affirming to me that I've put something out there that is helpful. And the best gift that you gave me today is to say that the program or anything I've done is non-judgmental, because I really, really do not want women to think that there is this one answer and one path and this is the way you have to do it or you cannot find happiness again. Like you're right. There's so many different answers for different people. And I thank you. Thank you for saying that, because that's my deepest desire is not to come across as the authoritarian where the way I did it is the only way. It's to say, let's figure out what's right for you, and then you can discover on your own. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for sharing that, Wendy. I love your story. I'm so proud of you. You sound so strong and so healthy. And I know what you meant when you said, you still have work to do. So do I. And I left my ex-husband years ago, and I still find myself with those codependent tendencies with my kids or with other relationships in my life. And I don't think there's ever like a finish line. Like I don't think we're running a marathon and there's that ribbon that you run through and all of a sudden you've made it, you've arrived, and you can never
because this codependency is our addiction. And just like they will always be an alcoholic or a drug addict, even if they quit forever, they still are. We are too. I mean, I am too. I'm going to have to, work on this for the rest of my days if I want to stay healthy. Just like your traditional addict would have to do.
Totally. And here's the thing that I've discovered is that, like being out in a world that's not filled with addiction every day is there's even the people that were never married to someone struggling with addiction or never grew up with it in their household. They have their own stuff they need to work on every day. Like it might not be addiction, but it's something else. Everybody has a calling to their work. It's just the work looks differently for everyone. So it's not like we need to judge ourselves or beat ourselves up for having work to do every day. It's just an acceptance of, this is my thorn to bear, and this is like what I need to improve on, and I'm going to just accept that about myself. And that doesn't make me less than or broken or worthless, to your point, like what you were saying. I'm still very much deserving of the good things. So anyways, I could go on and on about it, but thank you. I am so grateful that you did this.
Tried to speak from my heart. I really did.
You did.
I hope it came across that way.
Oh my gosh, it did. You are so courageous. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle. It's just been an honor.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.